It would have been so solid if I did that.
All
But
right, we are recording, and I'm gonna let you take it away.
perfect. So everyone, my name's Jason. Don't know if everyone caught that, but basically, long story short, my experiences in designing and then building and then also operating hosting facilities. Previously worked on a 15 megawatt site. In about under a year, we built that from 0 to 14 megawatts. And I was involved in that from literally finding the site, going through it, the 1 year site negotiation, all the way into planning, getting approval from the government, and hiring the staff. Pretty much A to Z was involved in that process. After that, got involved in the procurement side of things and assisting miners in getting the best equipment they need, helping people find what miners are priced effectively, because I'm sure everyone's seen overpriced equipment before. And then also we work in managing different hosting sites. So for example, the container, that's my background. That's one that's at our South Mississippi site that we're working on. And we're doing that off grid on a pipeline. But essentially, primary skill sets just in the actual designing and operations of hosting facilities and just mines in general. But we're going to talk about building better hosting facilities today because I think everyone wants to be the best. So let's see. There we go. All right, so we're gonna start with building design, and then we're gonna roll into the procurement side of things. I think procurement's pretty underrated, but it will either make or break your business, honestly. So after procurement, we're just gonna roll through everything, and it'll be a pretty, I think, informative for everyone. So looking forward to that. So just overall building your site, getting into it, the location that you choose to build it in is going to make or break the future of your company. So I assume no one here has a active mining site. Someone might, I don't know, but essentially you're building a home for your business, and your first site you build is your home base. You want it to be rock solid, protected, and strong. And what I mean by that is I'm sure everyone's seen the Times article that just came out about the Texas mines and seen all the news out of Arkansas and all these places where people are very bad neighbors. They pick bad locations and they have to go and fight to keep their business afloat. And, granted, there are some cases where there actually is just bad site choices, and avoiding that's very doable. So finding locations where you can just focus on your business and not focus on external outside factors is critical. And then another thing is just the design of your site. So just for example, in Mississippi, it snows now. And I've been here for about 8 years. 8 years ago, we would have one snow day a year at most. Last year, we had 10 to 12 inches of snow on the ground. And with most mines, if you're building in a place like Mississippi, you're not thinking about factors like snow, really any extreme weather that's below freezing. So having good design on your mining facility itself so that it can survive those kind of conditions is massive, because things will go wrong when the weather gets that extreme. But being ahead of the game on that's critical. And also looking back at different weather patterns, because you might build a mine in a place that you're not familiar with, and understanding just how the wind flows in an area can really impact everything. So I always, it snows in Mississippi. I think it's a good example because we shouldn't have to have snow screens. We shouldn't even have to think about the snow as an issue. But you do have to think about those things because it happens, and it's rare, but it happens. So next phase of kind of building and designing your mine is choosing what kind of mine you build. I'm sure everybody here is familiar with, immersion and hydro mining and all these very cool new cooling technologies. Personally, I've run immersion before and air cooled. Both of those have not gone to hydro mining yet, but there's reasons that we haven't. And pretty much the mine that you build, it defines everything about your business as a hosting facility. So with air cooled, for example, you can put anything in there. If you have a GPU client, so you can put a GPU client in an air-cooled facility very easily. You probably could as well in immersion. And essentially picking what kind of cooling system that you employ at your facility, it defines your maintenance costs. It defines how much you're going to spend on tradespeople. And I'll explain that one further shortly. How much staff you need, that's a big overhead cost. And really, bottom line, that's the one thing to focus on, is reducing man hours. And then how much you can charge. So the rates for air-cooled hosting and hydro mining immersion are all very different rate structures. And it also allows you to have some different flexibility between every option. But one's not necessarily better than the other because there's a reason it costs more. So we'll just start air-cooled. It's pretty straightforward. I think everyone's familiar with it. Everyone's seen an air-cooled miner, I'm sure. But you can serve pretty much anyone. Your rates are going to be like 7 to 7.5 more than likely. If you do retail guys, you might be at 8 cents to 8.5 cents. I've seen that before. One group that I do want to say has done an exceptional job on exceeding any rate I've ever seen is Abundant Mines over in Oregon. I want to say their average rate's 9 cents for air hosting, which is exceptionally high, but they've done a great job because I think there's a lot of quality for the value there. Air cooled is going to be the cheapest to deploy by far, and it's vulnerable to heat. It's vulnerable to cold, just like the snow that we talked about. But there's designs that can be made and things that can be implemented on a site level to make sure that it's easy and smooth to operate the site. And again, with the air cooled, you don't necessarily have to have a mindset of how do we operate this mining facility, because it's operating one miner at a time. Whereas with the different types of facilities, you won't necessarily get that. And again, I'll elaborate as we move on. But we're going to go to immersion next. I think, was anyone at Mining Disrupt by chance? I know Trevor was, and John was.
I was not at Disrupt.
You weren't?
But I think Mason and John went to Disrupt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I wish I had photos of them. I don't have photos of all the different types of immersion systems that were at Disrupt, but there were options that were $100,000 a megawatt all the way up to $670,000 a megawatt. So the cost of building an immersion facility is sky high compared to air-cooled. A typical target for building an air-cooled facility is going to be 160 to 250,000 a megawatt, and that's if you buy the best equipment, go completely overkill on everything. You're using, American transformers, the whole 9 yards. But there's reasons that immersion is more expensive. So this new generation of units is designed for immersion. It's something we've never seen before. WhatsMiner was the first to do it, and Avalon had a unit about a year ago that was designed for immersion. But personally, when I was operating the immersion site that we had, or we were managing, none of the units we had were built for immersion. So we had to literally go in, retrofit every single air-cooled machine, convert it to being an immersion unit, test it because we had to make sure it worked after we did the conversion, and then dunk the units. Per machine, that process took about an hour. So mentally, just imagine you have a megawatt of immersion, which is about 250 units, assuming you overclock to 4,000 watts. You're talking about 250 hours of just preparation and dunking time, minimum. That's if everything goes smoothly. The worst deployment that I think we did, it was 2 people and we had 9 machines. We spent 2 hours per machine because they were so dirty from the air facility they came from. So there's a lot more heavy lifting, I would say, on the immersion side of things. And with the cooling systems, the whole 9 yards, there's a lot that can be done there, because there's 2 options for cooling. There's dry coolers and water towers. Everyone, I'm sure, has seen a dry cooler before, but the water towers, they require maintenance. They require, and this is something I'd recommend, is getting on a service contract with a professional water treatment company, having a skilled plumber on staff, having all these technicians that are specialized in operating cooling towers. I want to say that the average cost for water treatment on a decent sized tower is going to run anywhere between $2,000 and $3,000 a month. So when we look at a rate of 8.5 cents, $2,000 a month on a megawatt comes out to roughly half a cent. So it starts eating your bottom line, hitting your profitability, and sure, you'll make more revenue, but there's just costs that exist that are going to be constant. And just the steep learning curve. If you have anything set up wrong in the tank, the oil is not going to flow right. Your pumps will fail at times. You need to know what to look out for. And really, there's not a big body of data or experience with immersion that exists yet. So as the industry progresses, we'll probably see that grow. But literally just looking at the tank and feeling how hot it is sometimes is the only way you can tell if the tank's working or not, because the units will just run through it. And then the other type of mine is hydro mining. As far as I know, I've never run a hydro mine. I've seen the containers, the whole 9 yards, but pretty much the two biggest pain points I've seen, or there's three, but the biggest one is that when you pick a container, you are stuck with that brand of miner. So with WhatsMiner, you have to pick a specific WhatsMiner container, and same with Bitmain. My only observation that makes me leery of ever doing hydro hosting, and this is why we haven't done it, is that the form factor of the air-cooled miners from Bitmain has changed once every 2 years. For example, the S21 Pro is about 2 inches taller than the S21. And if that were to occur with the hydro miners, every single container that was built for Bitmain hydros would be rendered useless because that's not an easy change to make at scale. A 2-inch increase would pretty much kill your container. So you're just in the hole and you have to buy a new container or figure it out really fast. And then with WhatsMiner, they don't change form factor very much, but still it's a matter of the units cost more. So your clientele is going to be different because very few people are going to want to shell out $5,000 to $9,000 a machine for one unit. And you can only serve one specific brand. So hydro mining and immersion, they're very good for mature businesses. And what I mean is you have 2 to 3 megawatts, let's say, running of air cooled. You're happy and you're of the mindset of, okay, we want to see what else we can do. We want to explore different avenues. And maybe you just do a nice little test run of it, but from day one, start with air cooled and then kind of level up your operations and complexity, because as you go from air cooled to immersion or hydro mining, the amount of preventative maintenance, the cost of everything, and really the amount of industrial level maintenance you have to do as a site operator, it doubles or triples overnight. And there's so much that I couldn't even cover it in terms of understanding the different impacts that choosing the type of mine you operate has on your business. So again, this is just personal recommendations from my experience. Your location matters. Again, the Times article highlights this. I think the media has done a great job warning everyone of this, but your location's the backbone of your business. It's like picking a house, essentially. You want to have a good neighborhood. So you don't want to be near commercial residential areas. It's just not worth it. Someone will be upset because they won't like Bitcoin. I've heard some pretty crazy examples, even from Mississippi locally, of people who like it. With air cooled or hydro mining or anything that requires it, you want to have a strong prevailing wind. So what that means is that there's constant wind flow in a stable direction regularly. That'll just help with overall cooling and operations. Essentially, it's going to push any of the hot air away, but also allow flow to happen. And airflow is just critical with the amount of heat we generate as a mining facility. You want to have a favorable regulatory environment. So, for example, Arkansas has the right to mine bill. Texas is very favorable. And those are just the best examples of good states. Now, New York, they're pushing anti-mining. So wouldn't recommend building a huge mine in New York, or really any mine in New York, but there's areas that have great regulatory environments and have supportive local communities that allow you to be successful. So it's that. The other part of it is you want to have a good power company. And what I mean by that is in Texas, ERCOT and that whole system, it's mega companies. You're just a client. They don't need your business. They're not going to treat you great. You just pay the bill on time and they'll do their part to the best they can. As a miner, we're essentially running a factory of sorts. So we're buying a product for very cheap and we're reselling it at a higher price, or we're using it to make it good. So your power company is actually your number one supplier, just like if you were making any product. So finding the right small to medium sized power company where your power demand creates a positive impact on them and increases their load substantially is just a great thing to look for, because you'll be supported by them. They will push for you to have a better rate. You'll have fast response times, and you're going to feel supported by the company you pay more money to than anyone else throughout your experience as a miner. Bottom line. And that is unbelievably valuable. And then a good workforce, of course, there's areas where either the cost of labor is too high, there's not young people that would want to work in this environment, or there's just a non-existent workforce. There are places that there's not a workforce that can take over and really fill the slots you'll need in your team to run a mine. So finding people that are good, skilled workers and have some background in the trades is huge. And that's one recommendation I'd make, is look for good workforce, good small to medium sized power companies, and then far away from everyone else, because you just want to have a cool site that all the people talk about and they're like, what is this place? We don't understand it. And that's pretty much it, because if they have to care about you mining there, they will. Oh, wait. There we go. Next part is equipment. So whenever you're building your mine, you're going to have a set budget of what you'll spend per megawatt. Again, back to that $160,000 to $250,000 per megawatt range. That's a huge, very broad number for air cooled. But, and John can elaborate on this, I'm sure, because he sells containers as well. I've seen clients go and buy the cheapest container they can. Typically, that's an amp box, and they're great. They get the job done. But what the issue is with an amp box is it requires you to do your job. And what I mean by that is there's almost constant maintenance. It will arrive with broken parts. You have to double check everything. The air filters are not up to spec by any means. That's just my personal opinion. And there's no forced airflow. So the units are going to overheat. And because of that, you're going to spend a lot of time on maintenance and labor and upgrading the machine. In my personal viewpoint, having something that's ready to go out of the box at your site that you don't have to upgrade once you're operational is worth more than its weight in gold. You're not going to have to call your clients and say, hey, we're having a downtime event. It saves you that pain. And having to call with, we're having a planned or unscheduled downtime event is the last phone call you want to have to make to your clients. So investing in good infrastructure and good containers from day one really sets you up for success, because that container is going to age, it's going to get older, and you want something that will maintain value over the course of you running it, because a week of rebuilding time or remodeling time is very expensive in years 2 and 3 of running your hosting business. Another thing, I'm sure everyone's seeing it says use aluminum. That's if you can. If you can use aluminum wire, I would do it. There's a lot of people that disagree with me, but it's about 60% less than copper wiring. So you save some money. Of course, it's an electrical issue, so the electricians are the ones to make that decision. And then again, on equipment materials, automation and having good workspaces for your team, even having a small shipping container office so they have a comfortable place to eat lunch and work out of, it's crucial. It gets hot, and what a lot of people don't realize is that the mining container itself is a very hostile environment to your senses. So it's very loud. Sometimes it's either very hot or very cold. There's almost no middle ground. and then there's wind everywhere around you. So it's exhausting to be working in constantly. You can't hear anything, and it's hot or cold. No middle ground again. So building an environment for your staff to be comfortable, and that's where investing in workspaces, I think, is a big deal. Pays itself back in dividends because your guys will be more alert, which means they'll be safer and they'll be more productive. So you'll have a better client experience. And then another thing, just putting this out there, is set up your procurement procedures before you even write a check or talk about writing a check. I'm sure Scott and everyone in this group, there's people that have a set way they do procurement. If you don't have one, talk to everyone, network, and understand how to do that, because ultimately it'll protect your business, it protects your budget essentially. Tradespeople, get everything in writing. There's a recording of this so everyone can go through it, and if anyone has questions, let me know. But use your local workers, they'll appreciate you, and the community will support you. And on the electrical side of things, use a master electrician. Verify that. Nobody will find, if you're a new mining facility, will understand what you were talking about when you ask them about it, and you want someone that's dedicated to their trade and it's comfortable enough to go and try something new. Because we are very, very weird electrical jobs as Bitcoin miners. Right. There we go. The final thing is permitting will make or break your business. So we want to go into areas that are unincorporated. And what that means is you're not in a city. You're just in a piece of land, typically farmland's ideal, or industrial parks. It limits the permitting requirements. There's very few regulations on what you can do. But if you do have regulations and permitting, just be open and honest and answer questions. Most people are terrified of it because it's like we live in a shadow world. But just being friendly and working with the government, not against them, is key to the future of your business. So this is our South Mississippi site. I just wanted to show an example here of, the whole investing in workspaces and location. We're in the middle of nowhere. There's not a house for 5 miles from our site. That's actually the pipeline that we connect to. Here's our generator system. There's John's containers. He sold me right there. And then the first thing we did, though, before we built any of this, was we put in a container office with air conditioning and workspaces. Again, it's remote. We want people to be comfortable. And that's critical, I think, just to the future of these, businesses everyone's trying to build. Is that if you employee turnover, that's it. It's going to affect you. So next one's procurement. Again, this will make or break you. So just remember, too good to be true exists. And you can push your sellers to do just about anything you want. What I mean by that is that they should provide documentation. You should negotiate your purchase agreements with them, and do not do anything on a handshake. Trevor sent me this great video of Joe, who's an attorney, talking about people doing 6-figure deals on a handshake without a contract signed. With mining equipment, I cannot emphasize more that documentation and having clear purchase agreements is critical. You have to have that because it will make or break you. Someone will sell you something that is broken knowingly, and you will be stuck with it, and there will be nothing you can do. So anything you can do to avoid that is critical to the future of your business. And honestly, it's just easier. Everyone here is ahead of the game on this. You have a network of people around you, so rely on them. I don't think anyone here wants anyone to fail. So everyone's here to support each other. Even here, if you don't buy something from me, give me a call. I'll check a vendor out. I don't care. Same with John. I'm sure he'd do the same thing. But we want everyone to be successful, and that's important. So work with the people that you know and trust instead of going out and finding some guy on Telegram selling a container, for example. And then the other thing is double checking the specs of products. For example, I had a client, this is a terrible story, but they went and bought a transformer, spent about $95,000 on it, and they were overcharged, which is again, by about 30 grand. Let's put that out there. And they bought the wrong transformer. So they bought a 480 volt transformer and they needed a 415 volt transformer. So they bought a product that they overpaid for. They couldn't resell it for what they bought, and they still had to go buy another one that was the right voltage. So double checking every single fact with your team that you have on the ground, your electricians, engineers, all those people, is critical. Basically, don't go, lone wolf on it and say, I want this done, I'm buying this transformer, for example, because it can blow up in your face. Again, just to exemplify this, this is a client actually. They bought an amp box without researching the product or verifying any details with the vendor. They were 15% over market value. So they thought they bought the amp box in 5V2. It's about $40,000 typically. It's a little bit high, but 40,000 is a good number. They actually bought an amp box in 5, which is the original amp box. There's no value to it, and it's a pretty bad unit. So they lost a bunch of money. To add into why it's bad is they're known for structural issues. So this is the amp box in 5. I think this was a very bad storm that just blew it over. And they didn't research it. They didn't consult with an expert. They just said, hey, we found this guy on the internet. We bought it. And this was a very large corporation with practices in place. But the bottom line is that theirs is structurally sound. It could have not been, but the PDUs are a nightmare. Everything on it is not good. And they should have gotten an N5V2, but they paid $39,000 for an N5V1. So someone just blatantly took advantage of them in that regard. So now we're on to hosting operations and client relations. We're going to roll through these. I'm not going to talk through them all just so everyone's clear. But you want to have an organized, scalable mine. And what I mean by that is adding a megawatt to your facility once you have the first one up and running and done well should not be a big push. Rolling into it, it should be, here's the playbook. We can do it, and deploying the playbook you did on the first time. So a few things I'm big on that I was with my staff is labeling everything. We would put a label on every single unit that came in from a client, detailing the delivery date and what batch it came in from, the model, and then what client it was. And the reason we did that is we have clients send in rolling batches of units. Let's say they buy 5 S21s here and a few there. And knowing the delivery dates of them on the units instead of a massive serial number list allowed the techs to visually look at the delivery date label, tell that the units were from the same batch, and identify trends on different batches of the units as they were purchased, because every unit's different, and they will break more than others. That was something that we're able to observe and identify pretty easily. Another thing is documenting all work. If a fan gets changed out, it needs to be documented. That's critical to your operation. Allows you to bill consistently on what labor is done, but also allows you to see how productive your team's being and knowing if they're hitting targets for productivity. If they're not, you can work with them to figure out why they're having issues. And that's important because at some level, your job is supporting the professionals you trust to run your facility to do their job the best they can. One thing I used to make people do, and my guys do, is I make them actually sign the miner with a Sharpie. So they did work on it. There was we'd put a label on it, and they had to sign the label so that if something broke, we could pull it. You knew exactly who did the work last time. And it was just a sense of pride where everyone had to sign their work, literally. And the other thing is key processes. One person's going to have a lot of responsibility more than likely, and be better at different things than other people are. Documenting their day-to-day is critical to the future operations. But essentially, these are just best practices. So safety, that's always the number one priority. Does not matter. We have high heat, loud noises, the whole nine. It's a hostile environment, bottom line. So valuing your team is critical. Bitcoin mining as a trade or as a technician, it's a weird field to get into, but trusting your team and showing them that this is something that they want to do, not a job they have to do, I think pays itself back in dividends, or it pays itself back very, very well. So having that on hand and knowing that your team is motivated and wants to be there every day isn't just saying, oh, checking into a 9 to 5. It's critical to the success of your business. The other thing I recommend is investing in tools and technology that generate value. Smart PDUs and telemetry and smart billing, all those things allow you to be more accurate, have better predictability in terms of maintenance and uptime events, but also understand where you have weak spots in your mining facility itself. And on the smart billing side of things with PDUs, it allows you to meter and document everything. So if a client has a billing dispute, you can show them the meter records for their individual miner and tell them, this is what we have for you. Here's what it is. It's smooth. I've seen facilities that just have normal PDUs. It's all estimated based on manufacturer specs. And the client's not necessarily getting a clear picture on how much power their unit's running, but also as a host, that impacts how much you're charging them. And you might be losing money on a machine that's just inefficient. It does happen, but investing in technology like smart PDUs and such, it improves your business's access to data and data collection, which means you can be more profitable. And another thing, I'll just highlight this, is prepare for things to break and photograph and document everything. I think those go hand in hand. Your container shows up, photograph it, every part of it. In 6 months, something breaks, photograph it. You get a minor shipment in, photograph it. You'll get good marketing content, but also you know what things look like when they're broken and when they're working properly. And on top of anything else, it's liability protection for you and your clients. If a shipping company destroyed a unit in transit, you know it because you have documentation before it got put on the truck, or you know it because you had documentation immediately after it was taken off the truck. So it's protecting everyone across the board when you document and photograph things. Another thing I recommend is don't let your mining techs be customer facing. Your clients need one point of contact across the board, and they need to focus on their jobs. That's it. They're going to try to make everyone happy. People do that inherently. So if they have one person leading them, that's all they need. We start adding in customers to their mix of people they have to listen to. It gets dicey very fast, and it's too confusing. And then the final thing that I would say is that documentation and data will make or break your business. The best example I have is having serial number list of every unit in your facility. Everyone should have that already, but not having one that is current and updated onto where things are and who owns what and when they arrived is critical. The thought experiment I have is just imagine what the impact would be if a disaster occurred. Let's say you had a fire in container 1 and every unit's burned up. There's no serial number stickers. There's no way for anyone to tell what units were in there without having a good, strong list. So again, client relations. Everyone, I'm sure, has rented an apartment or a house before here. So everyone's familiar with the kind of trust between a landlord and the tenant. Everyone should expect clear communications. As a client, they should and can expect clear communications. They should expect clear billing. What I mean is that it should be consistent and it should be all due on the same date, and invoices should be provided on a routine, regular schedule. If you send someone an invoice the day before it's due, they're probably not going to pay it late. So being consistent on billing is just a huge thing. They're going to expect reasonable maintenance response times. That means if their fan's broken, 2 days, that's a pretty reasonable response time. Get it fixed. Bottom line. Don't let it sit for a week or two. People will get angry. They don't understand why. And then a reasonable level of comfort. Everyone trusts their hosting provider with tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment. So making that person feel comfortable in the trust they give you is the least you could do. And it's vital to growing your business and not having turnover in clients. Basically, we want to have a churn rate of 0, and the only way to do that is, again, by providing a reasonable level of comfort. Again, these are just fast tips I have based on my experience. Don't accept units without a signed contract and deposit paid, and do not give out the shipping address for your facility. It sounds like a no-brainer, but we've had units just appear magically after giving someone an address to get a freight quote for. And you cannot touch them. You should not accept the shipment, because all that does is put you in a liability position without any protection from your hosting contract. That hosting contract exists to protect you and the client. It's there as a worst case scenario. You can offer more things. Say you want to do a fan swap for free, go for it. But bottom line is that you have a baseline level of protection with that hosting agreement. Number 3 is, again, billing consistently. You're going to have clients that are going to have trouble paying their bills every now and then. When Bitcoin was 15,000, that was something we had to work through with customers a lot. They remember that and they value that, and they will be your number 1 supporters if you work with them, not against them. Again, you choose to do business with this person, it's supposed to be a win-win. And number 4, this is something I've experienced, is that there's a concept of expensive money. And what I mean is every hosting slot will pay about the same, but the money you make from that hosting slot will either be cheap or expensive, and that's based off of your client. So vet everyone heavily. I would even ask for references depending on the person if you have any doubts. But essentially, you need to think about it like a landlord. You have to deal with this person for a year or more, and you are obligated through a contract to provide them with the service. So the person you're dealing with will matter at some level. And then, again, tips for strong relationships. This all falls under just general course of business. It's going to be different things based on how you run your operation, but these are just high level examples. Treat your clients like a partner. They hand you hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment. Their equipment's in your facility that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. If they don't pay their bill on time, you can't pay the power bill on time, and you don't make money. So it's a win-win relationship, but it's more of a partnership, not necessarily a client-vendor relationship. And I think that's something to remember. Place boundaries. What that means is from day 1 in that first meeting, say, send us an email if anything's wrong, or use a ticketing system. Do not call us and expect for us to get back to you immediately. You'll have a client, I will almost guarantee it, if you are in it long enough, that's going to call you at 4 a.m, 5 or 6 times in a row, and then be upset you didn't answer the phone. That is an avoidable situation just by setting clear boundaries. Now, people might not respect that, but you set the boundary from day 1. And that's an example of a client that you might not want to continue having as a client, and that is okay. Again, consistency in billing. Everyone wants to make money, but if they don't understand why they're paying a bill, it's a problem for them. And then just being communicative. If there's a power outage, something broke, anything like that, don't leave people in the dark. Communicate it fast so that your clients can respond to the changes in your operation. Fan swaps, all those things, for example. Again, you want them to make money so they buy more miners. Ultimately, you're going to do a great job as a host. They make money, they buy more miners and put them with you. So the final part of it is we build a mine, it's filled with branded clients, and you have a great team behind you. After that, you're preparing for growth and maintenance. So it really is boring, but it's just documentation. And it's documenting a few big things. It's establishing procedures across the board. Again, you're going to have to bring more staff on. You want them to be trained on the job, and everyone's going to have a different way of doing things, but you want to give them a framework and a baseline so that they can go and be successful in understanding what they do as their job. Some things are just inherently easy to do, but not everyone has the same background that you're going to have as the people in this group, but also as the technicians you already have at your facility. So having things that are basic, like fan swaps documented, That's a big one. And SD flash, another big example of a good thing to have documented, just so that there's clear, consistent methods that protects you as the business owner in the event that something's done improperly, but also protects your clients because the work that's done on the units will be done consistently and in a manner that meets the standards that are set by you as the business owner for the work conducted by your employees. Overall, you're going to have a lot to document though. Operational procedures, again, that's just daily. How do we start the day? That's documenting when people show up, the whole 9 yards, what units are removed, what tasks get when on what time frames, everything. It's pretty self-explanatory though. Preventative maintenance, that's going to occur every 3 months or so. That needs to be documented. Your repair procedures need to be documented. Your shipping procedures need to be documented. And you need to have documentation procedures on how you document things, literally. You would have a binder essentially that is a playbook that you can hand to your staff and make them successful with that playbook. And that is my number one tip for sustaining stability in your hosting business, is documenting everything that works well and then documenting the things that go wrong. But overall, these are just I could talk about this for hours, literally. But overall, these are just the big key topics to hit when thinking about what the future looks like for a hosting business. So that's all I have. Went on for 40 minutes, so I apologize for that one, Trevor. We went out of time budgets.
No, it's totally fine. We still got plenty of time for questions. I just want to say I really appreciate you, going over that. I definitely learned a lot. I hope that the crowd learned a lot as well. Real quick before we get into questions, guys, if you liked this topic of conversation, we will have more topics just like this. And every week we do group accountability sessions, which you do need to be a part of our mastermind group in order to do that. I did post the link to our mastermind in the comment section of this video. So please check that out. If you have any questions or concerns, please just hit me up on Telegram. You can find me just at TrevOB. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, please just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask Jason a question.
And Trevor, I'm going to send you a link to this and you can share it to everyone.
Absolutely. Awesome. I appreciate that. So we'll share it with the MasterMined Club.
Perfect.
Hello.
Hey, Ron.
I don't want to monopolize, but I had 4 questions.
Let's go through it.
So when it comes to creating contracts for hosting services, are there samples somewhere that you can work off of or get a guide on how to create a realistic? I mean, where can I find those?
It kind of falls into your network. So I'm sure do you have anyone that is a hosting provider already, Ron?
No.
I'll jump in quick. Like Jason probably has copies. I have different copies. Each facility will have ones that are slightly different. It can get really deep into weeds on them too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but we can get you some sort of an example for sure.
Okay,
absolutely.
I can get you an example too.
Yeah, I just kind of wondered where to go with that. And then, someone else need to go, or should I go on number 2?
Let's roll through them.
Nobody else has their hand raised, so go ahead.
So a question that I have is about insurance and ownership of assets. So I've heard that, for example, to find a provider, I've already